And we now have this new covenant. We have one worldwide, international, universal, or to use another word, Catholic Church, established by Christ. And so Christ is this royal high priest. And the sign of the new covenant is the Eucharist. And he says this. He uses the phrase, the new covenant, when he establishes the Eucharist, celebrating the Passover. So again, you see the continuity of the covenants. And I mentioned this last week with the Old Testament and New Testament. The words are actually, you could say, the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. And just important point, the church has been called Catholic. There's at least a record of it as early as the 2nd century, but probably earlier than that. And this is why we see a lot of people throughout history saying things about being Catholic and how important it is to be Catholic. Long before there was Protestantism, long before the Reformation, for example, St. Francis in the 12th century said, you must be Catholic. And he didn't mean Catholic as opposed to Protestant or something like that, but what he meant was you need to encapsulate the full picture of what it means to follow Christ. And that was seen as being summed up by the word Catholic. St. Augustine also talks about being a Catholic Christian. So, just a couple things about Jesus. We're going to talk more in depth about Jesus next week. But when Jesus comes on the scene, he gives the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the day, a lot of slack. And the reason is because one of the reasons, they're regressing back to the Mosaic covenant. They're very nationalistic. They didn't like any Gentile doing anything that had to do with God. And Jesus was calling them out on this. Remember, the Davidic covenant had worship for the Gentiles. And so, Jesus extends that further. So we have Jews and Gentiles open up in David, and Jesus takes that covenant and makes it worldwide, even further. So, and just an interesting or important point for us today is that we should be Catholic Americans, not American Catholics. The core essence of who we are should be in God first, and then summed up in our love for our country. But if we get it backwards, then we can get the cart before the horse, and so forth. So Jesus is the new Adam who goes to the tree. The cross is called the tree. This is one of the things that the Bible calls it, and the early Christians they called it the tree, because through Jesus' death, we receive life. And so it's also called the tree of life. And both Jesus and Moses, talk about Jesus being the new Moses, they have very parallel lives. They're both born during a time of a genocide of infants. Both the leaders try to kill all the infants. They both flee to Egypt in their early lives. They both go up a mountain. Remember, Moses went out and got the 10 Commandments. And Jesus goes up the mountain. He gives a new law. Jesus also gives, he goes up a mountain with 3 companions. Moses is not up a mountain with 3 companions at 1.2. And Moses comes down reflecting God's glory. He's transfigured. His face is white. And the same thing happens with Jesus. Jesus goes up the mountain. He's transfigured. And one of the people who appears with him is Moses. So we see Jesus as the new lawgiver, the new Moses. So God's continuity, the way God has been doing things, is fulfilled in Jesus. And the main thing here is that Jesus is priest, prophet, and king. And he is the ultimate purpose of all these roles that have been leading up. So next week, I'll talk more in depth about what exactly that means. But since it's been about 45 minutes, we'll go ahead and take a break. And if you have any questions, we'll get to that in the second part. So just move back there. And if you didn't get any of the sheets or Bible or catechism, go